How can you be winning the mirrorless war but losing at the same time? Let's get into it. Hey, what's up everybody? It is your boy Brandon. Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that I was thinking about with another friend of mine. So Sony has been doing an amazing job in the mirrorless community. They're one of the first ones to ever do it. And everything that they have done has really paved the way for other manufacturers like, Canon and Nikon and Panasonic and everybody who's coming out with their mirrorless cameras. Sony has been winning the war in mirrorless for a pretty long time because of their state-of-the-art focusing system, eye autofocus, and everything that has been, copied by other manufacturers since they pretty much came out, was one of the first ones to ever do it. I think of Sony and Canon as like the Apple and Samsung of photography. So I used to think of Sony as the Samsung, and I used to think of Canon as the Apple, because as you know, like Apple and Samsung, everybody was always talking about Apple and how they come out with 4, 5, and 6 different phones, and all their phones is just the same. They just change like a little bit and call it a new phone, while Samsung was, doing their best to innovate and do things a little bit different. That's the way I thought of Canon and Sony. There was a time where I thought that Canon was coming out with pretty much the same thing, and Sony was doing a little bit of innovation. Now I think we have reached a point to where I feel that Sony is the Apple of photography, and Canon is now the Samsung. Now, of course, I shoot Sony. Everybody knows I shoot Sony, and I've been a really, really big fan of Sony since Sony has kind of been doing this thing. I love the form factor of the Sony cameras. I love the type, I love the focus, I love the size, I love the button layout, I like the menu system. I like a lot of things about the Sony cameras. And I love, what they have done in the past. But a lot of those other manufacturers are starting to catch on board and starting to do their own in that aspect also. Sony used to lead the way, especially when it comes to focusing, whether you're, the focus breathing compensation, the eye autofocus, being able to really track your subject when they move in and out of frame. I mean, it's so snappy, and Sony is the best to do it. I still feel like there is a little bit more room to grow with manufacturers like, Nikon and Canon and Panasonic when it comes to that aspect of autofocus. I do think that they have made amazing strides in their autofocus, but I still don't think it's right there with Sony as of yet. Another area where Sony is still kind of leading the way is their one mount Sony E mount. They have a lot of manufacturers like Tamron, Sigma, Viltrox, a lot of different, Samyang. A lot of these guys make Sony E mount lenses, full frame APS-C, where you can use all of these lenses on your Sony cameras, and they work seamlessly. I really haven't noticed any type of incompatibility where they're just not hitting, they're not focusing, the lenses that are made today have been really, really great by these third-party companies. So the lens selection by Sony, without a metal bones or without an adapter where you have to adapt something from another brand, just mounting them straight onto the camera, have been flawless with Sony. And that's one of the things that keeps them up there, because of their lens selection, because you can go out and get cheaper lenses from these third-party companies and pay way, way less than a lot of other people. With Canon and a lot of other companies, you can take the RF mount, for example. That RF glass is amazing glass, but a lot of times you find a lot of Canon shooters either mounting or using a Metabones adapter so they can use other lenses and things like that to use on there. I know that the Canon EF glass that we had a while ago that we used on DSLRs works seamlessly with the Canon adapter to adapt that to your Canon RF. But you know, there's just a lot of people don't like using adapters. So to each his own, of course. This is not, you know, what is perfect and what is not. To each his own. But some people like them, some people don't. You know, it's a choice. So I think that's another area where, you know, Sony is still, you know, up there. So focusing, I still keep them on top. Lenses, I still keep them up there. But I'm going to tell you the biggest area where Sony is losing. Sony is losing the mirrorless war. That is price. That is price. They are losing this area to Canon hard. Let me explain to you why. If you was to get a updated camera, up to date, something new technology, new focusing, you will not pay. You have to pay at least $1,800, $1,700, $1,800 if you're getting a Sony camera. That's full frame. Now, we're not talking about APS-C. We're talking about full frame. So for those who are getting into full frame, understand Sony does not make a full frame camera that is up to date with really good focusing, with any of that. We don't have one, not especially not under $1,700. So you can run down some of the Sony cameras that we have. We have the A7 II, which is an old, outdated camera, old technology, old focusing. But what else do we have in full frame? The A7 III, old. A7R2, old. A7R3, old. The only thing that we have really for portraits, portrait cameras to taking pictures that is full frame, that has new technology and new focusing, the only thing that we have is the A7 IV, which is $24.98, and then you start to go up in price if you want something new in full frame. The A7C is $17.98, something like that. But again, it's kind of outdated. But that's really the only place that you can go. So if you want something new and recent, you can go with the A7 IV. You can try the A7C. That's not something I would even recommend to people. But again, the only thing that we really have is the A7 IV. And then you have to go to the A7 IV, A7R5, and things like that. But there hasn't been anything made recently. And the thing about it is, if you want a full frame camera, you're not going to pay under $1,800 for just for body only. This is where Canon has completely obliterated the mirrorless world. You can still get the EOS R that it's outdated, but it's still a great camera with the new RF mount focusing system. The RF, the Canon RP. The Canon RP is still under $1,000, and actually it's still a really, really good camera. Now, is it outdated? Yes, but it's the only full frame camera under $1,000. So for those who actually wants to get into full frame, it's amazing. But now what do we have? Canon now has the R8. It's an incredible camera. $14.99. $14.99. Insane. Now, Canon also came out just recently with the R100, which is like $500 APS-C camera. Yeah, it's going to be missing a lot of things on it, but it still has an updated focusing system. It still has the RF mount. Now you're going to be losing a lot of things on that 100, but it's something that's up to date, and it's not full frame. It is APS-C, but we're talking full frame. If you wanted to get full frame, The only people that you can really recommend right now, for especially for people who are on a budget, who don't have $2,400, $2,000 to spend on a camera, Canon is destroying the competition. They're still destroying the competition with the RP. They're still destroying the competition with the R. And now they completely taken over full frames under $1,500 with the Canon R8. Sony doesn't have anything like that. So I believe in order to keep Sony on top and in the running as one of probably the best mirrorless manufacturer, they need to develop a full frame camera, an up-to-date full frame camera. I would say I would come out with two under $1,000. That would be amazing. And a full frame camera under $1,500. You can't really say that the FX30 or the ZVE1 is for portraits or hybrid camera. That camera is almost the same as the A7S III with the 12 megapixel sensor. Sony does not have a full frame camera under $1,500 that is up to date. So I really think for them to stay in that running, Sony needs to go ahead and come out with something that is more for consumers, something that is in that price range to appeal to those who cannot afford the really expensive cameras. And that's where I think it is. So definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Canon is really starting to take over? Do you think that this is one of the directions that Sony needs to go? You know, again, under $1,500, they got 3 of them that are still really good. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let's see if Sony is going to respond in the future. See if we're going to get something, a full frame camera that is just a little bit more affordable for consumers out there. All right. Yeah, so leave your comment section in below. Let's take it to the comments and tell me what you guys think. All right, it's your boy Brandon, aka the Kevin Hart Photography, and I will see you in the next video. I holla. Peace.